Hey, it's JJ Virgin, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Virgin Diet, and the new Virgin Diet Cookbook. And one of my favorite areas, of course, is gut health. So I have the super cool opportunity. I mean, I'm so excited. Like, I'm sitting next to my hero here to interview Donna Gates of the Body Ecology Diet. And just full disclosure, Donna is my go-to gal. So whenever I have a gut question, a digestive question, I go to Donna to get the answer. I've quoted her in my books. She is just amazing. And if you haven't heard of the Body Ecology Diet, I don't know where the heck you've been. It's really one you've got to have for your success library. But I asked Donna if I could just have her for, a period of time and just ask her every single question that I know I want more information on, you'll want more information on, because when you really start to look at your gut, as you know, if you've gone through the Virgin Diet, your gut's everything. And when your gut's not right, nothing's right. Right? So welcome, Donna, and I'm just going to pummel you with questions. Is that okay?
That's great. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
I'm just beyond excited. And I made this whole card up of all these things here. And so
I hope I can answer them.
Where it will take us. I know there's nothing I can throw at you that's going to throw you, though. One of the things that I get asked all the time is, the term out there is gut dysbiosis. Mm-hmm. So what is that? What does that mean?
It is painful. It just means there's a big imbalance in your gut, and it could be a lot of inflammation, and the gut lining is open. It's what sometimes we call the leaky gut. Mm-hmm. So things are leaking through and getting into your body and creating a lot of havoc because of that.
What are the big symptoms? Because I think one of the things that's most surprising for people is they think of gas and bloating or constipation, diarrhea as gut problems. But we know that's just a little bit of a signs and
depression
symptoms.
is a big one.
Yeah, let's go through all the different things that can be attributed to gut dysbiosis.
Everything, because heart disease, diabetes, obesity for sure, brain problems, every single condition that we have, every single organ that we have is related to the gut. And there's the old-fashioned saying that disease begins in the gut. Well, health begins there too, but it's because the gut is feeding and nourishing every single organ in the body. So every single disease, in Chinese medicine, the lungs and the large intestine are related to each other. So all the lung conditions like asthma, hay fever, allergies, just everything.
Which this is great news, because when you think about it, so many of these things, like for me, it was chronic acne.
I had that too. It's a big one.
Chronic acne and some moodiness issues,
hormone
that were
imbalances.
fixed with fixing my gut. But I think for a lot of people that have tried everything and they still don't feel good, and they haven't really done things to help heal their gut. So, I want you to have your hope back right now, is what I'm saying. But before we kind of move into this, let's backtrack a little bit so people can get to know you and how you really became this queen of gut dysbiosis, or healing the gut is better than better term.
Yeah, I don't really see myself as a queen of gut dysbiosis.
Well, the queen of the great healthy gut.
I think years ago when I stumbled upon this whole body of knowledge about this microbiome, there were all these microbiologists in their research centers studying the bacterium, the microbiologists. And I don't know exactly, looking back, because it was 15, 20 years ago, I began to understand that we're supposed to have this world living in our gut. And as I began to dig deeper, which wasn't too easy to do because the research wasn't easily available, I began to realize that these bacteria are in there for a really important purpose. And then the other thing is that when we're born, we come into this world, and that is the first thing that starts to develop in our body, in this gut of ours, is this inner ecosystem. So we're supposed to put together in about 3 months of time an entire healthy microbiome. The new word is microbiome, but I called it an inner ecosystem for a long time, but it has to be there, or we can't live safely in this world.
I love the inner ecosystem. And so you're supposed to be developing this great healthy ecosystem in your gut of this great bacteria, and then you're a baby and you're not breastfeeding, and you get an ear infection and they give you the pink stuff. So what then happens?
The antibiotics literally, whether you're an adult or a child, wipes out every single bacteria in your gut, and leaving yeast. they're not a problem. And they start to grow like crazy, and they also change form. They grow tentacles and they burrow into the mucosal lining of the gut, creating a lot of inflammation and a lot of infection. And then things move through, including them. They move through the gut lining and go into the body and colonize the body. A lot of people know about, you know, you can actually get a stool test and see if you have candidiasis in the stool, in your gut. But I'm talking about systemic infections, when they have moved into the bloodstream and they're now all throughout the body.
What would be symptoms of that?
Once again, everywhere, because the yeast are doing two things. They're either going to specific places and causing havoc there. They can go into your lungs, they can go into your sinuses, your ear, your gut, your vagina, penis, all over the body. You can skin, all kinds of things show up in the skin too, athlete's foot and so on. So depending on where they go, they cause problem. But it's a systemic infection, meaning it's throughout the entire body. So the biggest thing they're doing is they're creating toxins all the time. So one of the most dangerous toxins in the body is a toxin called acetaldehyde. And acetaldehyde is, if you drink alcohol, the alcohol turns into acetaldehyde, and we're supposed to clear it, urinate it out of it, soon. Otherwise, we'd be very sick. There are a very large number of people in the world who can't take alcohol. They throw up, their face gets red, especially Asians, because they can't take the acetaldehyde. So we're making acetaldehyde all the time, 100% of the time, with this yeast infection. The yeast are also creating toxins like mannan and gliotoxin. Those toxins suppress the immune system. The only way you're going to get this yeast infection under control is to have a strong, hardy immune system. And they're so good at suppressing the immune system that most people never get their yeast under control.
Okay.
That's why the gut is important, because once again, the gut is our immune system. About 75% of our immune system is whether we have the bacteria in our gut or not.
Now, I know we're going to talk, so if you're sitting here freaking out, that we're going to talk about all the ways that you can heal. But before we go to your top ways to heal, how many people do you think, like what percentage of the population do you think has some kind of gut dysbiosis?
Well, I think by the time, as people are aging, every single one of an elderly person, I think babies are born, we don't get that healthy inner ecosystem from the get-go. We do take antibiotics, we are under stress, and we're on a high sugar diet.
I was going to ask you, what do you think is causing it? So stress, antibiotics, gluten,
sugar,
high
fat diet. Sugar and high fat especially, because like say a high saturated fat diet just destroys the bifidus. Those are really important bacteria to have in our gut. If you don't have enough bifidus, you'll be constipated. But what happens when the high saturated fat diet destroys the bifidus, then another bacteria called Wadsworthia takes over. They have, I don't know where they come up with the names for all these bacteria, but Wadsworthia comes along and it causes inflammation in the gut lining, and then again it's a permeable leaky gut, all kinds of problems, autoimmune conditions come about. So where does it start? It starts by eating, in that particular case, the high saturated fat diet, but gluten tears up the gut lining as well. And gluten is another interesting thing that very few people know about gluten. It's a protein, and yeast and the gluten of the protein gluten, they look identical to the immune system. So when we're eating gluten, our immune system, which is already in overwhelm trying to bring the yeast infection under control, sees the gluten, and that's an autoimmune response. It's trying to fight that gluten protein.
It is so amazing to me that, because you look at autoimmune is the biggest umbrella disease we have going.
Yeah.
And yet I'm just confused as to why the first line of defense isn't to pull the gluten out.
I think, it's addictive, like sugar is. And I think that people can't even imagine giving it up. I was helping my son's roommate, he's in college, and he's a big kid, a very handsome young man. He ended up in the hospital because of an asthma attack, but he's had asthma all his life. So they wanted to talk to me, and I said, you gotta cut out all the dairy. You gotta get the sugar out of your diet. He couldn't even, I said, do you eat a lot of dairy? And he said, yeah, a lot. I drink a lot of milk. I love it. And I said, you got to take it out of your diet. And he said, I can't. So I had to go in and explain to him, casein, gluten, sugar, they're extremely addictive. The casein is casomorphine. It's from the morphine family. So you've got to break that addiction just like you would to morphine or
quickly, because I haven't really
cocaine.
pulled those out too. So how quickly do you see that people can break that addiction?
I think that it's not easy. Like with dairy, it might take 2 weeks. Sugar, at least the first 4 days is hard. And then you'll have moments, like for example, when you're dehydrated and when you're under a lot of stress and when you're very tired, your body thinks sugar. So then you're gonna grab something and bang, you're addicted again. But if you will drink a lot of water, I always tell people that, put some lemon juice in water with some minerals in their water, and then put in some stevia so it tastes sweet. And then all day long you're sipping on that and your body thinks it's getting something sweet. It's not really, but it thinks it is because the water tastes, it's like a lemonade and it tastes sweet. That helps tremendously because we crave a lot when we're dehydrated, so the water is helping with that. The stevia is giving you the sweet taste. So little tools like that can help you through those first few days when your body's overcoming the addiction, but it's a real addiction. And if it were cocaine, you'd think, I don't want to mess up my life, I'm gonna break this addiction, but we don't think that way with gluten and sugar and casein.
Right, which is actually worse because they're everywhere because of that. It's
And
like you're not
everything,
going to have
we've had them all
cocaine
in
everywhere,
life. From the beginning of our life, that's the first, every food we eat today, not my kids anyway, their moms are educated, know better, but in the normal world, all the foods we're given in the beginning of our life have casein, sugar, and dairy.
That's how we start the day every day.
So we addict our children from the beginning of life.
So you pull these out, and one of the things I always like to say is we can do anything for a couple of weeks, but I always say, okay, what are we going to put in place? Because if you just pull things out and you don't give people alternatives, but especially with your program, I know you have some amazing healing foods. So what are the top foods you have people put in?
Well, I try to turn them onto something fermented. One thing, the coconut kefir, the fermented vegetables, one of our probiotic liquids, because those sour, they're sour and they dampen your desire for sugar.
Okay, that's a
big
huge
deal.
one. So
huge.
Now, one of the reasons that I wanted to spend time with you was to finally get over my fear of fermented foods, because honestly, that sour thing, it takes a little adjusting to.
Well, now I understand why when I'd say, do you want me to send you some of my cultured vegetables? You said, that's all right, not now. I didn't know you were fearful of them.
I've never liked the taste of pickled things. I don't like pickled ginger. I don't like pickles. I don't like sauerkraut. I've never liked any of that stuff. But you've helped me get over this. But for the average person that's listening and going, I don't, that's like me, because I think that that's a pretty normal response. We're a little intimidated by it.
But wait. You started off liking sugar and you got over sugar.
Yeah, I don't like sugar at all.
And you got over gluten. So why is this any different? I mean, what got you to get over the sugar?
It really isn't.
And then has this block with the fermented sour foods.
So I think one of the important things that I've gotten from you, and I'd love to hear you go through, is really you get over sugar because you realize this is one of the most aging substances you can possibly eat. Like in terms of the big needle movers for your health, taking sugar out. Like if I had to pick one thing and say, okay, you're only going to give me one thing, it's kind of a tussle between sugar and gluten, but I'd probably pick sugar as my number one. You got to get the sugar out, and then it'd be gluten and dairy, and then I'd go after soy.
And bad fats too.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like, okay, and this and that. But, so I could make a big case against that. And you do retrain your taste buds. So with fermented foods and listening to you really talk them through, because, we might think, oh, you can heal your gut and do, take some probiotics and do, but what's the value of fermented foods beyond just being able to take a probiotic supplement? Okay,
but you said something right off the bat. Sugar is aging. These are anti-aging. They're amazingly anti-aging. Even Eli Michnikov mentioned that a long time ago, over 100 years ago, and he almost doubled his lifespan. He lived a really long time, and he ate fermented foods. They were widely available back in those days. We don't know all that.
Well, these are really traditional foods. They just aren't traditional anymore.
I know, and until I started bringing them back into the American diet, they literally didn't exist anywhere in our diet. Now they're getting quite popular. If you go on Amazon, you will see a lot of cookbooks out, today. Not all fermented foods are healthy. I know everybody's into kombucha, but I don't recommend it because through that process, when you make kombucha, you get a lot of wild yeast from the air that comes in. You don't want wild yeast. Wine is wild yeast fermentation. Sourdough bread. What's the other big one? Beer as well. And so people drink those and they get, and that's gluten too. Even if you get gluten-free beer, you're still getting the yeast and you're getting that's going to create a lot of gas and bloating. So what's the benefits? Well, they're tremendously important for digestion. You eat them along with a meal and you're going to digest that meal. It's going to feel more comfortable.
So it's like taking a digestive enzyme.
It is, definitely. I do think digestive enzymes are wonderful too. People don't make enough stomach acid.
You should always start with food. It's like anything you can get from food, then you add supplements just by their very name should be supplemental, right? So,
right, and actually I can't eat eggs unless they're very softly cooked and unless I either take a digestive enzyme, but I always eat eggs with some cultured vegetables or drink some coconut kefir, and then I digest them fine. So many people have told me that same thing. Otherwise it's just not digesting it. You can feel
eggs
it.
Are one of the top ones when I test for food intolerances that people have trouble with. I find after 3 weeks, as they start to get out of it, they can start to incorporate them. Some of them pastured eggs back in, but maybe this will be
I think
a way
a lot
they
of the
can do
things
it.
we think we're allergic to are really just because we're not digesting them. And so the fermented foods are the first go-to there.
Okay,
and
so
we
they're
have
going to
a
help with
variety of
digestive enzymes. What else do they do as benefits?
Powerful cleansers, powerful, particularly the fermented vegetables and the coconut kefir, because those, you'll read all kinds of research about how the cruciferous family, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, and so on, they have been known to help detoxify our body from excess estrogen, which both men and women need. We get too much estrogen and we're prone to breast cancer, prostate cancer, and bloating and so on. We have to clear that excess estrogen from our body, those artificial estrogens. They, not everybody can afford organic food, or you can't get everything organic. So if you eat a meal and you've got some cultured vegetables on your plate, the microbiota in those foods are going to eat up the poisons. Like let's say you ate some lettuce or something, or something that was sprayed, and you have something fermented in that meal, they're going to eat up the chemicals and pesticides that were on that food for you. Everybody's so afraid of mercury in their fish. And I just tell everybody, you can't tell if you have mercury in the fish. And today we have radiation in our ocean. Eat the fermented vegetables, because those bacteria, that's one of their most important jobs, is they're scavengers of, as a matter of fact, out in the ocean, that big pile of trash, or if they spill oil in the ocean, what they do to clean that up is put bacteria on them, and they eat it up.
No kidding.
So in our body, we're putting in these wonderful microbes to eat up the garbage.
So what would we need then as a daily, is this a daily dose thing? In order to do this, what would you recommend?
Well, I would love to see somebody at their 2 biggest meals of the day, lunch and their big midday meal and their evening meal. I would love for them to have at least 2 big spoonfuls of the fermented vegetables. I like to put the fermented liquids, coconut kefir and our probiotic liquids, in a little champagne or wine glass and serve that too, and you can sip on that with a meal. As those bacteria move, see, they're in the food, right? And so as they move through the digestive tract, they're doing all kinds of things in there. They're breaking down the proteins, breaking down the fats, eating up the sugars in there. They're really protective.
So for people, because one of the big things that I've now seen over the last couple of years, really because we've been aware of it, it's been around, but is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So I'm assuming this would be a first line of defense to killing off the bad bacteria and getting some
Well, actually,
good
it's the
bacteria
first
back.
line of defense, because if we were eating these all of our life, we wouldn't.
It'd never be an issue.
The good bacteria would be in there, and that bad bacteria comes into the small intestine, and it doesn't have a chance. It would have been attacked and gobbled up immediately. That's what they do. They go after eggs and parasites and the bad guys that we might have on our food. And you can take your vegetables and wash them off and think you got everything off of them, but you didn't. There's still eggs and parasites, so they're going to take care of those for you. So that's where small bowel overgrowth comes from. But oftentimes the bacteria that do set up shop there, they're nasty nasty guys. And I have no problems telling people just take an antibiotic. Today's antibiotic can work only in the gut. It's not broad spectrum. It doesn't get everything. And it will wipe out everything, but you want to get that bad guy out of there as fast as possible.
If you've got a chronic
nasty.
SIBO, because what I see with SIBO is people don't lose weight. They're bloated all the time because that bad bacteria is just feeding, just extracting more calories from the food you eat and storing it as fat, and you just can't, you're bloated all the time, no matter what, whether you eat or not. So if you were going to do that and take something like Xifaxan, I would assume is one you'd be thinking of?
One I know that is used a lot is Rifaximin.
So I think that's the same. Then what would be the second course, because that's going to go in there and just...
So while you're on that bacteria killing everything, and you're eating the fermented foods and drinking fermented liquids, you're constantly sending in this army of new recruits to set up shop in there. Now, one of the things they do is they actually change their environment, and this is important. If it's real toxic in there, they've got to move in and clean up the environment so that future generations coming in down the road can survive there. That's really important. They have the power to do that. Another thing, you mentioned obesity and weight loss. There's a lot of new research today showing that having a balanced gut is essential. If somebody's obese, let's say, and they take the bacteria out of their gut and put it into a skinny little mouse, he will become obese because that bacteria is what's making him obese, just like it's making that person obese.
How about heartburn?
Heartburn is just basically same thing. If somebody came to me with that problem, I'd put him on a digestive enzyme, both. I'd put them on hydrochloric acid and pepsin for the stomach and pancreatin for the small intestine. But, and interestingly, they go on drugs that stop stomach acid, which is the wrong thing to do.
Let's talk about what that really does to someone when they do that, because it's like, so someone has heartburn. And from what you've just said, it's, probably due to the fact that they have low stomach acid.
Yeah. And one other factor too. Foods doesn't move through our bodies smoothly all of our lifetime. We become constipated. And we've got this small intestine that's 22 feet long. If you look out in front of you, 22 feet, that's a long way. We have to fit that small intestine way up under our lungs and way down under our pubic bone. And so every 2 inches, it's making a turn. Now, it's very easy for things to collect in there. So when you're eating pasty, gooey, gluteny, sugary donuts and cereals and dairy and things like that, all the stuff we're raised on, it coats our small intestine and it creates a perfect environment for the bad guys to get in and stay. So that's another part of what's going on with a person who's got heartburn and GERD, basically, is that's all caught in there, and they're not eliminating.
Well,
so they need to get that going.
How do they get that going?
Believe it or not, once again, it sounds like I'm a
broken
record. Yes, but the fermented foods they do, because they start pooping all that. They break that down to like little rotor-rooters, helping to clean up the gut. And I also am a big believer home enemas and colonics during that time too. It'll speed everything up.
Let's talk about then someone goes on the purple pill or one of these things to block the acid. What are the long-term effects of that?
I should know this, many side effects, but
I mean, I know
they're
one
not solving the problem.
That pops to mind because it's an obvious one, and I've now caught it enough times. Is you get osteoporosis. But when you look at it and you don't, now you're not. If you are blocking your stomach acid, you can't absorb your protein. Now you can't make your hormones, you can't make your neurotransmitters, you can't build bone. I mean, it's just like I looked at it and I went, well, this is a recipe for disaster.
Every drug is really statins, whatever you talk about, they all have side effects.
But
I don't even know them all.
What's sad about the heartburn part is that for the majority of people, there's always going to be a special case. It's due to what you've described here of low stomach acid and then all this gunk.
It's not moving smoothly through their body.
So it's not because you have high elevated stomach acid at all. So you really aren't going and fixing the problem.
No, I don't know where that came up as a solution and why so many people have bought into it. It's absolutely backwards.
And they get scared. They get scared of doing it.
They need to go to a functional medicine doctor, which of course both of us would totally agree on that know but differently. So I think they're with the wrong doctor.
Well, and it's interesting to me because you look at some of the different specialties, and for some reason the GI stuff, you look at a lot of the medicines that people get put on with GI issues, and they are way worse than the original issue was. that I can tell.
I don't even pay attention to all the side effects because, you know, you watch those commercials on TV and they
it's so
say,
funny, and they go,
and you'll die. But that's okay, I keep taking it. And it's like, oh no, where can be that
this.
dumb?
I'm like, oh my gosh. So besides the coconut kefir and fermented foods, any other foods you want to give a big shout out for as your favorite healing foods?
Oh, just other than fermented foods, you mean?
Anything else?
Oh, I think that, I mean, there's a vast amount of research on the importance of fish oil for the gut. It's very healing for the inflammation. And fish oil can be cod liver oil, regular fish oil, krill, and there's also the green lipid mussels from New Zealand. Those are great for inflammation. I think that, what else? Vegetables. They've got the fiber. See, the microbes that we want, when we eat, we're not just eating for ourselves, we're eating for them too. I always say, this is the world where we're God. And so we can be a good, benevolent God, or we can be a bad God, and what are we going to create in this world down here? But every time we eat, we're feeding us and we're feeding them, and there's trillions and trillions of them.
I know we've got more of them than us, really.
Way, way more. And actually, there are neighborhoods all over the body where lots of them live, and they all have their own genes. So we have our set of genes, which is about 30,000 of those, but they have, can you imagine trillions or hundreds of trillions of bacteria with all their genes? So their genes are being expressed too. We need to take care of them and feed them, and so I think too much sugar kills them. A little bit of sugar that nature puts in a piece of fruit is good for them. And then they love vegetables because of the fiber. You know, people juice and then they do smoothies. Well, I'm not big on juicing because you take all the fiber out, and the bacteria need the fiber.
I guess you could juice if you took the fiber and ate that, left the juice where it was.
That's true. The bacteria would love you for that.
So fiber feeds bacteria. And of course,
and
the
then
vegetables with the phytonutrients, and
if you have a little bit of butter, because it's got short chain fatty acids. Same with coconut.
Ghee, so I've been doing a lot of that.
Ghee is the best, and then coconut oil also is really good for the gut, healing the gut, and the microbes love the medium chain triglyceride.
Okay, so then
your
top. So we've gotten gluten, dairy, and
vegetables,
sugar, and damaged fats. Any other ones that are just your absolute no-nos?
Let's see. No, I think that's it.
Those are the big.
They should read your book.
Well, we are we go along. There's the beautiful symbiotic relationship, just like the gut microbiome.
You know what it is? I've decided that if you are a seeker of the truth, you'll come to where we are. What we're teaching.
It's interesting when you look at how we got to where we are. It was we both have been on these health quests. And it's like, what that worked a little bit, but it should have worked more. What about this? What about this? What about this? And you finally get to this thing. You're like, oh, you know.
I think everybody will eventually get here.
But why not shorten the learning curve? And that's what I really looked at was, if there are things that we can do that shorten the learning curve, especially with GI issues, because they just take you down. And I mean, you fix that, everything gets better, and it gets better quickly. And that's the important lesson here is, you know, if you've got something that's ruling your life like a food craving, yeah, you're going to go through a little bit of an uncomfortable time. Yes, you are. But
uncomfortable is aging. Imagine.
But you'll break free of it. You break free of it, and then it's like, how rotten is it to have your whole life dictated by when you're going to get that piece of bread or that frozen yogurt or that latte?
Yeah,
you know, where that's like just your whole life is about getting this thing that you can't live without.
You know, when I was a little kid, I would look at really old people. They seemed old to me, and I think, gosh, you know, it's hard to be old. People are all shrunk up, and you have to help them across the street or roll them around in a wheelchair, or they're grumpy. You know, do we all have to go through that? But we don't. I remember my grandfather. He used to be. I used to say, you shouldn't put all that pepper over your food, Papa. You know, and he said, don't tell me what to eat. So he lived a really long time, but the last 10, 20 years of his life, he was hooked up to an oxygen machine because he had emphysema. He would have liked to have died.
Yeah, I was
I mean, he really would have.
Like that.
No, he didn't. But you know, we do pay the price later on, and you might live an extra 20, 30 years and be miserable. So, what's more miserable, that or getting over your addictions to these
Right.
things. You know, I think it's, the choice to me is a no-brainer.
Well, but also when you talked about it, and I think one of the biggest takeaways I've gotten from you that I just love is that these sour fermented foods can help you get over sweet, because I'm always looking for what you can put in place. You can't just take things away from
Right,
people.
I totally agree with that.
So I always look at swaps, but I like the fact that you took a swap to the whole next level, because this swap actually helps you get through the addiction.
It's like an antidote, really, to sugar.
Yeah, that's great.
Because it is eating up the sugar. So even if I were to eat sugar, let's say I went to someone's wedding, I would eat the cake, of course. But I would come home, I might have a glass of water with some apple cider vinegar, which would make me more alkaline because that made me more acid. And I'd eat a couple of scoops of cultured vegetables to put those bacteria down there so they'll eat up the sugar of the cake, you know, and the gluten or whatever.
And do some push-ups.
So there, yeah. Oh yeah, we can't leave out the exercise part. That's where you're my teacher. Because every study out there is talking, I mean, over and over again, we have to keep moving our body. And again, I think too, in the way that works best for us. You know, I think there's also a lot of research showing over-exercising
Right, you know, it's
can
interesting.
stress the gut.
The single biggest way you heal is to change your food. Exercise is great, and I'm not a proponent of endurance exercise at all. It's only moving more gently and then short bursts and resistance training.
Yeah, perfect, yeah.
But the single fastest way you can change your health, your weight, your mood, everything is by changing what's in the end of your fork. And so this is what I love, because really it's what we don't think about is whatever you've got going on, you fix your digestion, whether it completely goes away or not, it's going to improve. It's going to improve. So
We saw
your
that with-
tools are incredible for this.
Well, we saw that with our autistic children years ago when I first got into helping their parents. That was the most important step. There's other things they can do, other therapies that some need, some don't need them, but the number one thing was to get them off of sugar, gluten, get these fermented foods into their diet. That's affecting their brain. And then let the body heal itself. We are what we eat, but we are what we don't eat too. And adding these fermented vegetables, for some reason, we created this big country over here without them, and it's time to add them in.
Well, I tell you, you sold me. I wanted you to. I was scared, but I really wanted you to. I really knew that, you know, health is a journey. All the places we can go. You know, I think it's important for people to understand that none of us are ever done, that there's always another step we can do that's better. And my next big frontier is moving into fermented foods. I'm going to start adding fermented, coconut kefir and quinoa milk and some of these things into my shakes in the morning, because that's such an easy thing for me to do.
And I can't wait to hear what you
And
notice, because you're already so healthy.
vegetables. I know, so it's just the next level. So I love your work, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've done, being out there, because it's, especially with you, you've been a pioneer with this. I mean, people were not doing it as you started to bring it out there. And whenever you do that, you know, you kind of take a fall, you take the hits, the original hits for all of it.
I decided that maybe my purpose is a catalyst, because I brought stevia in years ago, and you know, what we know, it's really Rhabadia side, but we called it stevia. And then coconut oil was in here. I had to get the first coconut oil and start teaching about that for a couple of years. Then everybody got into it.
But first they were like, oh my gosh, that's fast.
Oh, it's very, very bad. But it's very, very good. And now everybody agrees. And so I'm trying to do the same thing with fermented foods. It seems to be the harder battle of the three. But I started off actually with fermented dairy. You know, all the people out there doing yogurt. So fermented kefir is way better for you. At least if you're going to do dairy, ferment it. There are some people that are okay with dairy, but not in the beginning. You got to first heal the gut. You never should do dairy when the gut's open.
Coconut, why not? You know, you can have coconut kefir.
It's a better choice.
So that's a great one, and I'm going to say, hey, start your day with the shake and throw in coconut kefir.
Yes.
So awesome.
Good, thank you for saying that.
Yes. Well, you know, when I decide I'm going to go all in on something, I'm going to do it. So
you've
completely convinced me on this as being one of the most foundational things you can do for your gut. That's why I wanted to bring you in.
For your gut, for your brain, for your skin. and
well,
for
your gut is then
aging,
controlling everything. So
not
it's
aging, happiness, depression.
that was the
everything.
big thing I want everyone to get, because so many people come and do the Virgin diet because they have gut issues. And
oh,
this
really?
needs to be,
Oh.
yeah. You know, so some people came in when I did the PBS, the show for PBS, it was about drop 7 foods, feel better fast. We talked a lot about GI issues and how leaky gut really caused all these other problems. But, you know, one of the key ways to heal, besides pulling those foods and swapping, is to add fermented foods in. So it's kind of, that's why I wanted to do this as an interview, so that I could get that out to everybody. And it would be great if I could include
Thank
a
you.
couple of your recipes too. Is that cool with you?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I know they're so easy to make now that we've done some of these together.
They're easy, they're fun, especially if you have a friend doing them with you.
Yeah, or your
And the
kids. I think
results-
these are totally, it's like doing chemistry in your house, right?
Absolutely, yeah. They're definitely
So-
family food.
BodyEcology.com is one of my go-to resources. There's a couple places that I go to get all of my information for anything,
good,
anything
good.
digestive. It's BodyEcology.com, and you have so many great, cool resources there as well. Now I'm going to include a couple things with this interview, but for
Oh,
everybody,
great.
this is one you want to do. You should have the Body Ecology diet, it should be in your success library, and then you'll want to go to BodyEcology.com, because you send out, you have great newsletters, you've got loads of great information, so it's a great resource.
And we have the Facebook page too, where people can join and help each other. You know, it's
And you
it's
have
a
great,
good
some of
website.
these great, like your kefir starter, I have that. You've got great things there that I use. I use your products, so the
Thank you,
products are
yeah.
awesome too. So thank
you.
you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. And
Thank you for helping me get the
over
word
my
out.
fear. Yeah, well, you've been a pioneer, and I really honor you, respect you, and also you did. I mean, I was legitimately like intimidated by fermented vegetables.
Oh, good.
So, thank you.
I can't wait to see what they do for you, because you're already so beautiful, so fit. How can it get any better
Oh my
than
gosh, how
that?
could you get better? Believe me, there's places.
Let me know when
There
you find.
always
As soon as
are.
you notice, let me know.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
So again, bodyecology.com, sign up, get your cool free stuff, and I'm going to include some recipes for you to download as well. And I want to hear what this is doing for you too. So I'm going to share my success stories with you, and you guys all share your success stories with both of us. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.